right, welcome everybody to Innovative Events Podcast. Today we bring back Adam Corshane from NewMed Direct Primary Care. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
All right, thank you for joining us again. Just to catch everybody up, we prior were on episode 1 out of our 10 episode series, and we spoke about whole person care minus the middleman. So, Adam, do you mind just giving us a short recap on that, and then we can dive in today on episode 2?
Sure. Yeah, of course. And of course, last week I was visiting family in Rhode Island, so I was actually in a coffee shop, and hopefully it wasn't too loud and all that. So now it's quiet. I'm at home, unless the dogs start barking. But the quick version was a frustration with modern healthcare as we know it. And if I want to treat someone, we basically ask their insurance company what the right plan is, as opposed to dozens of years of medical training. So the ask, the wish is that people could stop and demand more out of their own healthcare. So that was the quick recap.
Okay, perfect. And so then today we are on episode 2, and our topic will be more than a CBC and why advanced labs matter. So can you tell us what is a CBC? What does that mean?
Okay, so I always joke, and I tell patients, I've been saying this more, I joke about everything, but I'm serious at the same time. So a CBC, if you've ever had a blood test, I almost guarantee you a CBC was done. And that stands for complete blood count. So it's a quick capture of the types of blood cells in your body. So white blood cells, red blood cells, platelets, things like that. So it's a very common test. And I mean, almost every time you ever have blood drawn, it's in there. And it tells us a lot of information. But for the most part, when you see your medical person, you're like, oh, I had a test done. How was it? And they say, great. And that's the extent of it. So that's why we thought we would focus a little bit on that idea during this little session.
All right. And I hear you say that it matters. Why do these blood tests matter?
Great question. And do we make a mountain out of a molehill? But so CBC is the molehill, but it's enormous. And on that, I can look at white blood cells. That helps you to fight infection. And the range is roughly 4 to 11. So if you come in at 10.8, they say everything looks great. You're good, Amy. But in truth, I kind of like that. I say if the car is idling and I'm not fighting an infection, I kind of like it between 5 and 8. So if I'm at a 4.2, that's not bad, but is it optimal? And if it's not, why? And same thing with adding things like the upper end of it. If it's at a 10, that's not bad. But why isn't it between 5 and 8? So we ask those questions. So we can tell a bunch of stuff about that. I had someone in the office the other day, an older woman, just feeling yucky, and we happened to check hers, and her white blood cells were high, elevated. That tells me she's fighting an infection of some type, and then it's my job to figure out where it is in her body. But then we have red blood cells, hemoglobin, hematocrit. Those transport nutrients and gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide. So obviously that's important. And it's good to take into consideration the person. So we live at altitude. So in a lot of people at altitude, that could be a little bit elevated, and that's fine. Then we have things like the size of the cell, and that can tell me about nutrient deficiencies or bleeding, and then platelets are for blood clotting. But then we have the differential, and that's the individual immune cells. And they can all be in range, but that doesn't mean they're optimal. So if they're out of proportion, that tells me stuff about gut health. So you can really drill down and get more information out of it. And again, we have the data. We're getting the blood test anyway. So do we just say, I don't see anything out of the ordinary, so you're good, versus are we optimal?
Okay. So then with that, I do have a question. Okay, so let's go back and simplify it. We talked about what a CBC is. Now, why is it considered a standard part of most annual checkups?
And that's an easy one. So, for instance, one of the more significant ones is if we have someone in their 50s or 60s and all of a sudden they're showing pretty anemic. It's one of two things. They're not absorbing things or they're losing things. And in someone in their 50s or 60s, if they're losing and not keeping enough of the blood cells, it makes me wonder if they're having a slow, unnoticed bleed, and makes you think the colon cancer, colonoscopy. So it's a trigger for those types of things. Less impressive from that, but things like MCV, the size of the cells, if it's a little on the high side, then I start thinking of B12 deficiencies. So it's an easy, basic test to kind of just lay some of the groundwork. And again, it's basic. There's a lot more than that.
Okay. And so then we mentioned these are just annual checkups. Now, is there an age range for this?
The slight. In general, there's There are slight ones like
Okay.
children. Pediatrics have slightly different ranges than
Mhm.
adults, but once you're in the adult range, it's pretty broad. And I'll criticize that too because we come up with that range, that reference interval,
Mm.
just by saying who has a heartbeat, what was their level, put them in the range, and then we get this range, and that's how we come up with a huge range. For platelets, it's typically 150 to 450. Like that's three times. Like, oh my gosh, what a difference. And that's why what is optimal for this guy? That's something to be asked.
Okay,
I'll
because
keep moving my hands, and they keep going in and out and black. So yeah, it's fun.
you're
I'm a
fine.
hand talker.
No, but I mean, it gets me thinking because I think about it when I would go in with my basic primary doctor
Yep.
in past blood draws weren't really mentioned. It was just very much, how are you? How are you feeling? A series of questions. You're in and you're out. But I've definitely learned, having you as a provider, you are far more proactive. So if someone were to come to you, what would you recommend that people start with?
So, and again, I'm a child, so I joke about things and I say there's no all panel. People say I want to check everything. There's no everything panel. So in our office, I created a panel. It's pretty extensive, and then I labeled it all, and I thought that was cute. Um, but there is no all, and it really has to be customized. But as a general recommendation for pretty much everyone, is the standard labs, which might have a basic thyroid, basic cholesterol, metabolic panel for kidneys. Some don't even check liver, but that, um, and then the CBC. And then from there, I guess I'll get into this now. It's kind of like bringing your car to the mechanic. And you're like, I really love this car. I want to keep the car. You bring it in and they're like, kick the tires. They check the tire pressure and like, this car looks great. You can go home now. You're like, but do you want to check the engine? They're like, no, it's only 3 years old. You don't need to do that. And you say, well, what about the oil pressure? Like, nah, it's probably fine. You don't need to worry about it unless you start blasting some smoke out of the tailpipe. And as a medical system, we tolerate that. We say, oh, okay, so if Jimmy is 30 years old, they look at the algorithm, they say, yeah, you don't even need labs. So your car, you don't even need a new engine. Do you want to wait till it gets to where you need a new engine, or do you want it to keep working and running? So the whole idea of, what should be checked, and I don't know if we want to get this deep, but like some of the minerals, some of the vitamins, all that sort of stuff, and advanced cholesterol markers, so that I can say, well, do you have a pending heart attack this year, or are we planning out 20 to 30 years, saying you might be at that point? Let's change it now before it becomes a problem.
Mm, okay. Okay. Well, it looks like we got a question that came up, so let's see what we have.
Oh boy.
So, what's the danger on relying only on normal lab ranges instead of optimal ones?
Okay. And that's, plan A or plan B. So
Mm.
normal labs are like everyone else. And that's the standards. That's not average human. That's current health and status of people. So, if someone reaches 40 years old, it's pretty average to have high blood pressure. We'll put you on meds. And when you're 45, you can have high cholesterol. We've got pills for that. And then by the time you're 50, you've got some diabetes and we've got pills for that too. That's
Mm.
pretty average. I don't want to be average. I want to be better than average. I want to be an optimal human. So when we go with the average range, well, you're still on track to be average. And if that's good enough for the person, I say good for you. And if it's less than average, man, you might not even make it that long. But for my folks that are in the optimal category, it's like now you have freedom. I don't care if you're 90 or 19, you can have more freedom to do the things you want to do, not the things I want you to do. This is an individualized, personalized approach.
Right, right. And I completely understand where you're going with that. Working in healthcare in my past years and taking care of elderly,
Hmm.
there's you run into who can still, they're in their 90s, go up and down stairs perfectly fine, and you've
Yes,
got others that are already consumed and stuck to their wheelchair. And I sit there and I'm like, dang, I got to make sure I take care of my health so I know where I'll be when I'm in my 90s,
of
if I'm
course.
there.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Another question came up.
Rapid fire.
All right. Then why does the healthcare system not say that we need to be better than average?
And it's not that the healthcare system is evil or that people
Mhm.
are bad. It's the system. So the conventional medical model today doesn't say, is the person optimal? It says what's broken in the person. And then we fix broken things. So we wait till they break. So if you're on the verge of breaking, but you're not broken, you're fine. And then the next round, when you do break, we say, oh, you've got diabetes. I know what to do about that. So we have algorithms for everything. There's no algorithm for healthy. There is just algorithms for broken stuff. So if you, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll say the whole idea of the system is to say what's wrong. So my friends that work in the ER, I joke and say, you guys are terrible. You didn't explain the plan. You didn't explain anything. And they say, but did they die? I'm like, fine. The job of an emergency department is to keep the person alive. So I
Mhm.
joke and I say, well, job well done. The person's alive, but now let's go figure out what's going on. So
Yeah.
all of medicine is kind of set up that way. So like you said, if you go in for a physical, they're like, oh, what are you here for? Oh, physical. Oh, great. This is easy. So I'm just going to ask, like, do you exercise? Yes, no. I'm not going to ask details. Do you eat good food or not? Yes. Okay, good. Do you smoke? Do you drink too much? Do you go to the dentist? They're good questions, but I want to know some details. But anyway, and then we
Yeah.
listen to heart, lungs, blood pressure, that kind of stuff, and say, yep, you're not broken. You can go now. And that's a misspeaking. We say, you're looking good,
Hmm.
meaning you're not broken. That's the gauge. So if it ain't broke, we don't fix it. And that's a chancy way to do it. If you run your home that way, or your car, or your finances, like,
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah.
So we try to do that with the human body and mind. That's part of it.
Okay. All right. And then we have another question for you here. All right. So, how can things like chronic fatigue, brain fog, or hormonal imbalances go undetected on a standard panel?
Yeah. Yikes. Okay. So that's a great question. Um, the last one, hormonal imbalances, is probably the easiest one. Check the hormones. And I remember we have a friend a couple years ago. I think she was 52 at the time, and she said, "Oh yeah, I know you guys do this stuff." I went to my primary and I said, "I felt like my hormones were off, and could they check them?" And they said, "Oh, honey, you're okay. They're fine. They should be a little bit off because you're getting near menopause. So yeah, don't worry about it." That was the answer. So how does it go undetected? Don't check it. The other ones like brain fog. How do you measure it? You really can't. Or chronic fatigue, or just not feeling good. That's really hard. So again, in a system that has algorithms. So Amy, what are you doing here today? You have a headache. Wonderful. I can spell headache and I get an algorithm. But if it's chronic headaches, or chronic fatigue, or depression, or obesity, or brain fog, how do they go undetected? Well, we're not checking any of the other labs. And it's hard to just say, well, and I was taught this day one of being a PA is, you don't treat labs, you treat people. Labs just help guide you. So I call it the report card of the body. And I had a lady on the phone today, or we did a video, but she's 35. She's having a really tough time. Her labs actually look pretty darn good, which is really hard. And we laughed about that. Thankfully, we were able to laugh. But, the labs look good. She's like, I feel horrible. I said, I know you do. I can tell because I know her.
Hmm.
Um, so labs are part of it, but you can't do the regular labs are just going to tell you if you're about to break. That's it. So you can wait that long or dig deeper.
Well, how much then ties in with us between our mind and our thinking and our actual bodily functions?
They're tied. You really can't have one without the other. Meaning, I can't take wonderful care of my body and I'm brain dead upstairs. Like that just doesn't work.
Mhm.
So I think I said this last week, but we call it the pillars of well-being. The animal needs food, nutrition. It
Mhm.
needs physical movement and activity. It needs sleep and rest. We need stress relief, something to do with that stress, and then we need a sense of purpose. So if I focus on three or four of those things and just ignore the other one, I might luck out and it's okay.
Mhm.
But realistically, we all know people who might seem so wonderful, but they can't get out of their own way and it's just not working. And they say, but why?
Hmm.
It's because we're not asking the right questions and digging.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm going to kind of bring this back in.
Okay.
So what is the benefit of tracking labs over time versus looking at them one time snapshot?
Yep. So if we figure that the human body has many billions of things going on,
Mhm.
Amy Slater is not a thyroid. She's a complex organism with many things. So if I take a snapshot a year ago, you're not the same person you were a year ago. The environment isn't the same. Your food access is not the same. So things change. So some people say, how often should I check labs? And I say, well, if you're doing experiments and trying different things, we should recheck and get you a report card to see if it's hurting you or helping you. So how often do we check? Well, if you're not doing anything, we don't need to do it that often. But if you're doing big experiments, more often, just like studying in school. If you're studying hard and working, you want to see if it's work, if it's being effective. If you're paying a tutor, you want to
Mhm.
know if it's working. You need some measurement, and that's what the labs are.
Gotcha. Can you give us some examples of those types of experiments in which someone would want to
Sure.
do continuous labs?
Um, Human beings, there's what, 8 billion of us. So when people say, like, what's the best kind of food? Not garbage is easy, but what kind should I eat? That's very
Right.
challenging. So we
Yeah.
work on that. And if truly I had some insight to my ancestry and I knew that my people were vegans, maybe less meat would be good for this guy.
Mm.
On the other hand, maybe my people were big meat eaters. Maybe I should go meat heavy. So when people say, hey, I want to try vegan, I say, good for you, do it. Then let's recheck some stuff and see if it's working. If things get worse, it's probably not working.
Mm.
Or if their gut health is getting worse, it's probably not working. We fine tune it. On the other hand, I had someone who said, I'm a strict carnivore for 3 months. Let's check your stuff. And if it's going to, heck in a handbasket, we might not want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So those are the experiments. Or I'm going to try going for a walk after dinner, or working on my sleep, or whatever.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, we had another question come in. How do functional markers like fasting insulin, HSCRP, and then, pardon me, I don't know how to pronounce that. Is that
Homocysteine.
thank you, or ferritin give a better picture of long-term health?
Okay. So most of us are going to die from one of three things. It's going to be
Mhm.
a heart attack, stroke, it's going to be cancer, or it's going to be some brain degeneration like Alzheimer's, dementia, something like that. It's probably one of those three.
Yeah.
The fundamental underlying commonality with that and pretty much all chronic things, is going to be metabolic dysfunction. So metabolics is kind of like the communication system of the heart, of the body. Sorry, my heart right now is talking to my brain. That's talking to my pancreas and my spleen, which is talking to my kidneys. It's a big communication system,
Mhm.
and when it does what it was designed to do over 250,000 years, get out of the way. It's fine. It can heal myself. I can do all kinds of things. When
Mhm.
we screw that up, we get metabolic dysfunction. So at its core, if someone has diabetes, they have metabolic dysfunction. If someone has gout, metabolic dysfunction, all that.
Mhm.
So things like insulin resistance is one of the core principles of metabolic dysfunction. Uh, High sensitivity CRP, C reactive protein, that's a general inflammation marker. So having inflammation is not normal. We don't like inflammation. Homocysteine is a blood vessel inflammation marker. We don't like it there. Ferritin is storage form of iron, but when iron's normal, ferritin's high, sometimes that's actually an acute inflammatory marker. So if we measure those types of things, we can get a hint. And sometimes, like of all of those, it depends on the person, but insulin is sometimes like the canary in the coal mine. If your insulin starts creeping up, something's out of whack.
Mhm.
And if you don't do anything, which is an option, and again, if it's not broken, we don't fix it. But if we use that as a warning, and then we say, okay, something's off. Let's refocus. How's nutrition? How's physical activity? All those pillars. Maybe we can avoid or reverse things. So, and I'll just say this: sounds like I'm bashing the medical system. I'm not. It's amazing for acute care, but when someone goes to their primary care and they say, "Oh, look at me, I have type 2 diabetes. What do I do to cure it?" No one would do this, but essentially we giggle and we say, "Well, you go on these meds," and they probably will slow it down and make it manageable. We will manage your chronic disease, but nobody's going to cure it. It's like most of the time you can reverse it and actually get it back down into normal. Like, wow, you greedy bugger, you want to be healthy. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm getting on my tangents, Amy, but metabolic dysfunction. We do not like metabolic dysfunction. We like metabolic function. So that's where some of those markers come in.
Okay. Okay. Now, another question that I have is, can emotional stress or poor sleep impact lab results, even if everything else on your lab is dialed in?
Yes, definitely. So those two things, emotional stress, sleep, um, those alone, even one night, the next day, if you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor, your blood sugars will be off like that quickly, one
Oh,
day. Yep,
interesting.
one day. If you and I get into a fight and you're screaming at me because I'm too awesome for you, or whatever, my sugars will go up. Stress releases cortisol, that affects insulin, that affects my sugars. So, I mean, the short answer is definitely yes.
Gotcha.
And that's the frustrating part. And I've had so many people over the years where they say, "I feel horrible." Okay, cool. I'm
Yeah.
simplifying, but we do all the labs. And occasionally, I remember this one woman a couple years ago. She's probably in her early 60s, but we did all our labs, and they were pretty darn good. And at the end, I look up and I say, "What do you think?" And she goes, And I knew she was going to say something like this. She goes, kind of almost wish you just told me I had cancer. Like, I feel
Oh,
bad.
mm,
Life is not good. I feel bad. And I
yeah.
said, yep. So that vessel, her body, it looks pretty good, but something's out of balance. We're not asked. So we did the deep dive and tried to figure some things out.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. Another question that we have is what's one surprising marker that often changes first when someone makes a lifestyle improvements?
Okay. Whew. All right. So it's a big, broad question, but um, those inflammatory markers, the CRP, that one especially, that's a general inflammation marker. So sometimes I see that one. Same thing with insulin. I can see those change a lot. Um, Not to say, hey, look at me, but as an example, my blood sugars are awesome. But you know, insulin is about 2.5 to 25. We like it less than 10. Less than 5 is better. A couple of years ago, I got my labs back, and my insulin was like 14. I was like, what the heck? Like, kind of annoyed. I get cranky when my labs aren't dialed in. And I was thinking about it. It's like, well, sugar triggers insulin, so it must like what? That doesn't add up. And then I was like, oh, idiot! Like stress, running a small business, cortisol, insulin. Okay, time to smarten up. So, what's one surprising marker? So insulin, the other side of insulin would be the hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month average blood sugar. That one, it takes 3 months, but that one can definitely change. And then inflammation, those probably are the big ones off the top of my head. I can say also liver values in the complete metabolic panel, the AST, the ALT, especially. Like sometimes if someone's drinking a bit too much alcohol, the ALT starts to go up, and I can see that as liver inflammation, or if there's fatty liver. So sometimes when they make changes, I can see it there. So it's a difference between, and just to make a quick point, ALT, the range is up to about 40-ish. But for a woman, I want it less than 20. And for a man, I want it less than 30. So if I pop in at 39, Dr. Jimmy says, Adam, everything looks great, buddy. Carry on. I say, all right, cool. But if someone says, hey, listen, you're at 39, it should be less than 30 if you're dialed in. What can we do there so it doesn't get broken?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, with labs that are done, is there like a percentage or number in which these are accurate or inaccurate? How well can you
So,
labs?
yeah, that's a great question. Especially the big labs, the LabCorp, Quest, that kind of stuff, they're doing, I don't know, probably millions of labs every week. I don't know the number. It's a lot. So they're pretty dialed in. Having said that, no lab is perfect. So when I started doing medical stuff, probably a little over 20 years ago, I had some good mentors, and someone said, if something's really out of whack, see if the person's out of whack. If they are, it's probably accurate. But if for some reason, like everything else is fine, it just doesn't add up, it could be an error. So what do? How about we recheck it? And sometimes we recheck it and it's still really out of whack. And then it makes us scratch our head and say, what's going on here? We're missing
Yeah.
something. We should dig deeper. Um, yeah, I just had a call with someone a little while ago, and her testosterone level, not on any sort of supplementation, but hers when we checked, I think in February, it was a good man's range. And we scratched our heads, but we said she feels fine. She's got no symptoms. Blah 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 blah. We rechecked it, and it's actually in the normal range. So,
Oh,
or the average range, I should say. So, yeah, I think that answers it.
okay, yeah, yeah, because we know, there's no system that is perfect, even when we go to AI, right? So
Yes. Yep. Yep.
we know
Definitely.
sometimes if something just doesn't feel right, check it again.
Hmm.
Okay. So another question that I have for you is if CBC is not enough, what then is?
So, and that's a moving target because we learn about new tests, we learn about other things. Sometimes they fall out of favor, they go in favor. So the
Mhm.
question has to be ultimately not what does my report card say, but what do I say? Me, the
Right.
patient. So if I'm feeling poorly, someone's not asking the right questions. And I'm not saying it's easy. I think I've been working on my health, like with a serious effort, deep diving, as we call it, for like 7 years. We're still learning new things, me and my family.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And I say, again, because my body changes, but so does my living environment, so does my work, my stress level, my sleep, all these moving targets. So we have to just keep asking the questions. One thing, I don't think I said this last week, but one question, one challenge would be, do I feel optimal? I don't
Right.
know if I said this, but I don't know why it popped in my head a while back, but do I feel optimal? And it's tough because if I had a gauge, like this is optimal, Adam optimal, and Adam's here, suboptimal, but there's no gauge, there's no reference point. So all I have is the experiences I've had up to this point. but maybe I'm limiting myself. Maybe I'm at 50%. So what do I do? Well, I could be complacent and say it's good enough for me. And if life is awesome,
Mm.
okay. But if I'm yearning to find a different answer, I can say, well, what if I try just as a vegan versus carnivore versus omnivore? I tell patients, try it. And then maybe
Right.
I wear a glucose monitor or I do something. And if I feel worse, that's probably not the way for me. So I should try something else. Same thing with physical activity. What's the best physical activity?
Mhm.
And that is so personalized. So it depends. Some people, if you're a runner, you like running, and I come along and say, you know what, you should be a biker. You're like, I don't like cycling. Like, go run, go run. Although strength training is important for everybody. But anyway, side note. So it's
Miserable.
asking, yeah, it's asking the question of what does this human need, and do I have a team? Do I have people that are working on my behalf to try to push the envelope and not say, am I good enough? Because
Mm.
if you're good enough, we'll get those nursing home beds ready for you because you're going there. That's what's going to happen, and you'll spend a decade or two there.
Mm.
That's pretty average. So get ready.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, that sounds miserable. Not interested in that. So if someone wants to come to you
Mhm.
and they're just like, I'm not at my best, what are those steps when they come to you and how do they get that help?
So again, it's customized. A lot of people, we have a conversation, we're talking things, and I say, do you want to keep talking and going? We can do physical assessments and all that stuff, or do we start by looking under the hood and do some labs? Some people say, no, I want to come in and just chat. Cool. I tell every patient, and if anyone's checking this out, they'll say, yep, he does say that. You're the bus driver. I'm merely a navigator. So when I tell my patient, take a left up here, they say, screw it, I'm going to take a right. That's okay with me. That's
Right.
freedom. Or if I say, I see a stop sign ahead, stop. They're like, nope, I'm going faster. That's freedom. Go for it. My job is to educate and say, well, if you go faster, you might get into a car accident, and that could be very bad. But it's freedom. As long as we have the ability to ask the questions and know, honestly, what is the risk versus what is the benefit, then we can make our own choices and live with it.
Mm. Well said. Well said. So I know we're coming up on our time here.
Sure.
You've already given a great closing, but do you have anything else you'd like to add and share to our listeners?
Whew, that's pretty open ended, which is great. No, I get really passionate about this. I told a couple of my siblings last week that when I had some older, not even older, 63-year-old family member kind of get really sick and die when I was a very brand new PA and I was useless. I had nothing to offer. Now, 14 years later, I look back and I say, oh, if only I had known this, I could have
Mm.
asked more questions and maybe the outcome would have been very different. It might not have been. That could be fate. But that's why I realized that's why I'm passionate about this is because we have amazing ability to ask questions, to measure things, to analyze things. But instead, we're still asking real questions for acute care. What's wrong with you today? But if the person says nothing, man, I love it when people say nothing because then that means we can talk about the next few decades. That to me is really exciting. So, are you working with someone who gets excited to figure out if you're going to be here in 20 years? And will you be going for a hike or getting pushed in your wheelchair? And that's not, some people do live in nursing homes and they should because the life sent them in that direction. But
Mhm.
most of us shouldn't, and do we have a family support system and all the other aspects of it? So,
Mhm.
yeah, I implore people like ask, demand more, and try to find out a deeper answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure to have you on here again.
Well, thanks for having me.
And then all you listeners out here, we'll be back for episode 3 on August 1st. The topic will be creating a supplement plan that fits your body. So a targeted support. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Perfect. See you guys.